is Helen, and today I'm going to be talking about the worst books that I read in 2019. We are being joined by my roommate's cat today. This is Orf. I love him, he's a good boy. These books are going to be in no particular order in terms of, worst to best or best to worst. The order that they're going to be in today is the order that I read them in. So we will start with the first worst book that I read closer to the beginning of the year, and end with the last worst book that I read closer to the end of the year. And with all of that out of the way, let's get right into this. So the first book on my list is Alex and Eliza by Melissa de la Cruz. I did not like this book. I was really looking forward to having a YA book that told the story of Alexander Hamilton and Eliza Schuyler, but this book was terrible. The writing was really clunky, and it went from sounding very modern day to sometimes just sounding super old-timey for no particular reason. It would jump back and forth a lot. Eliza seemed like she was being written to be this really feminist character, but she wasn't actually doing anything. I don't know. The whole point of this book is supposed to be that you want Alex and Eliza to get together, and I just didn't care. I managed to push through this book. I gave it 2 out of 5 stars. I'm definitely not picking up the rest of the series. I don't know how this became a trilogy. The next book is my only 1-star book of the year, and that is The Body in the Woods by April Henry. I read this book basically in one sitting. It's very short. It's 210 pages or something. And it was so bad. I hated this book. It was about this search and rescue team that's made up out of teenagers, and they go into the woods to try and find someone. Instead they find a body, and then it's them trying to figure out who the killer is. It's so easy to figure out, and then you spend 200 more pages of the book waiting for the character just to figure it out, even though you already know who it is. It's so frustratingly terrible, and there's a romance in here that literally pops up for 1 page. There's nothing for the whole book, and then the very last page it's oh, by the way. And there was so much that was could have been interesting about this book. I remember that one of the main characters' moms has some sort of mental disability or mental health problem. It's never really brought up again after she disappears for a couple days or something. It's been months since I read this. I'm probably never going to pick up another April Henry book because this was not a good first read from her. The third book on this list is Secrets of the Sea House, and this is by Elizabeth Gifford, I believe. And this is a dual timeline story, one following a family that just bought the sea house in modern day, and they are expecting a baby. While they are renovating the house, they find the skeleton of an infant buried under the floorboards that has its feet kind of fused together like a fin. And then we follow the people who used to live in this house 200 years ago, who were obsessed with the Selkie myth. That was what attracted me to this book in the first place, was that it seemed like it was going to be more about Selkies, and I thought maybe it was going to be a little bit more fantastical. It was not. It's a very slow book. I didn't care about 90% of what was going on, and the 10% that I did care about, I still didn't really care about. It was just the most interesting parts. Yeah, I don't know. This was just not a fun book. I gave it 2 stars. I don't really want to think about it ever again. The next book on this list was such a disappointment for me, and that was The Catastrophic History of You and Me by Jess Rothenberg. I have The Kingdom by this author that I'm very excited, but that's not what this is about. This is about The Catastrophic History of You and Me. The basic premise of this book is that it's about a girl who literally died from a broken heart, and that sounded really fascinating to me. This book cover is absolutely gorgeous. I had heard really good things about it when I first started book 2. Again, this happens a lot. It was just a little bit too YA of 2009, if that makes sense. I wasn't a fan of the main character. I wasn't a big fan of the love interest. The end of it was a little bit weird, and I'm not sure how I felt about that. There's a lot going on with this book. And I liked the actual storyline. I liked what was going on in the story. It just didn't vibe with me. I gave it 2 stars. The next one is Crimes of Grindelwald, the screenplay. I watched the movie and then read the screenplay. I can't even give you a synopsis of this book, or the movie even. It is so weirdly cut together, and It makes no sense. None of the stories actually come together in any way. I hate what they did to Queenie. I hate what they made her do. Yeah, this was not a good book. Or a good movie. I gave it like 2 out of 5 stars. It's probably closer to 1.5. Next on this list is Flame in the Mist by Renee Ahdieh, and I'm so sad that it is on this list. Flame in the Mist is a Mulan-inspired, heavily Japanese-inspired story following a girl who infiltrates a group of ronin or samurai, and I have always been fascinated with certain aspects of Japanese culture and mythology, and samurais are a very intriguing part of their history, and I was very excited to read this book, and I really, really loved it for like the first half, and then the second half I hated. If the book had ended halfway through, I would have been like, yeah, that's like a 4-star book, but instead the second half happened. I was not a fan of the romance in this book. I was not a fan of, like, one of the things it says in the synopsis is that the main character is a skilled alchemist, and that literally isn't brought up and doesn't come into play until 3/4 of the way through the book, and she makes one thing, and that's it, and it's still not really relevant. This story was just so disappointing. I was really hoping that I would like it and would want to pick up the second book in this duology, but I don't think I'm going to. So, yeah, I gave that 2 stars. Next was another really disappointing book for me, and that was The Distance Between Us by Casey West. I read 3 Casey West books last year. I read The Villain Boyfriend, which I gave 4 stars. I read Listen to Your Heart, which I gave 3 stars. And then I read The Distance Between Us. And based on the cover, I thought that this was going to be like a fun little road trip book or something along those lines. No, it's about a poor girl and a rich boy, and just the bullshit that doesn't need to be there. I don't know, I had a really hard time with this book, and I think I would have enjoyed it more if I had been more prepared for what it was for, but I don't like to read synopses of books very often because they spoil so much, and I don't know, it wasn't for me. I still enjoyed the writing of it. I liked the characters. I just didn't like the plot. So I'm gonna keep reading Casey West. I think I have like 3 more of her books, and I'm very excited to read them. But yeah, this one, because I did like Villain Boyfriend so much, and I did enjoy Listen to Your Heart, I had very high expectations going into The Distance Between Us, because it's one I've heard really good things about, and then it just wasn't quite there for me. On the other hand, I have The Dalek Generation by Nick Briggs, which is one of the Doctor Who novels, and this book was a slog. It took me so long to read, and it's not that long. This is about the Doctor finding a bunch of planets that are run by the Daleks, and he knows that they're up to something, but no one there will believe him because they've done all this good stuff for these people, so why would they believe that the Daleks are bad? And he finds these 3 kids whose parents are dead, and he's trying to help them, and one of them is like this 4-year-old genius who just acts like an adult, aside from the fact that he plays with a toy spaceship. I don't know, I didn't like this at all. I think mostly it was the writing for me in this one, because I loved the plot, and I think the characters could have been interesting, but they weren't written very well. And I don't feel like the Doctor was written super well either. Everything in this book was very staccato and quick and to the point, and it's one where I think it could have benefited from some different language being used. One of the things that makes Doctor Who so great is kind of the like mystical, whimsical elements of it, and I felt like that was missing completely. So yeah, I wasn't a big fan. I gave this 2 stars as well. Next, my last 2 are kind of controversial picks. First one being Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. I love the story of Frankenstein. Every sort of adaptation I've ever seen of it, I've really enjoyed. Even reading it, it's not like I hated the story itself, but I have a really hard time, and this is so dumb as an English major, I have a really hard time reading classical lit. I have a really hard time getting past the language that's being used, and that was really prevalent for me in this book. I also just did not give a shit about Victor. All of his chapters were so boring. All he does is whine and complain. He needs to just bang Henry and get it over with. I really did enjoy, though. I liked the middle section of the book that's told from the creature's point of view. I thought that that was really interesting, and those were by far the best chapters in the whole book. If the whole book had been written from the creature's point of view, I think it would have been eons better. But yeah, I gave this like 2 stars as well. And finally, the last book on this list is Tell Me How You Really Feel by Amina Maisapi. This is a sapphic romance that uses the grumpy, soft trope, and it's about this girl named Sana. Instead of putting her deposit down to go to med school, is applying to go to like this internship type thing in India. And Rachel, who wants to be a movie director, and she needs to finish her final film project to send to film school. And due to some circumstances, Rachel is forced to cast Sana into the main role of the film. The two of them hate each other, or at least Rachel hates Sana. This was another book where the first half of it was great, and I really enjoyed it. I loved the hate to love thing happening. I loved the way these two bantered. I loved watching their relationship grow. But in the second half of the book, I found that a lot of the characters seemed to do a complete 180 based on how they were in the first half. And I'm not even talking about Rachel and Sana here. I'm talking about, like, their families, specifically Sana's family. People who you would think would get mad at her for doing certain things don't, and the people who you would think would be chill with it aren't. And so, the thing that annoyed me the most about this book was that the entire second half could have been stopped if people fucking communicated. All Sana had to do was talk to her family before any of this shit happened. And then all the stuff that happened between Rachel and Sana in the second half could have been avoided if Rachel just talked to Sana early on. And it's so frustrating. I was really enjoying my time reading it until just this one moment where it clicked in my head that I wasn't having a good time anymore, and I was just really frustrated with it by the end. I also gave this book 2 out of 5 stars, and those are my worst books that I read in 2019. What do you think of my picks? You should let me know in the comments down below. And what were some of your worst books of 2019? I would also love to hear about those down below. I do respond to every comment in my videos, and I absolutely love hearing from you. If you liked this video, make sure you hit that like button. If you like what I'm doing here on this channel, hit that subscribe button. I would love to see you around here more. And with all that out of the way, I will see you soon with a new video. Bye-bye!